transformation, real conversations, and real success. And trying to go live here on Facebook, if Facebook is going to let me do that, not letting me do that. On transformation for your a transformational art at Burning Man, also going live on YouTube as well as on my own. Really, again, excited and delighted and honored to be talking to the different artists. It's an incredible experience that I get to have meeting these unique geniuses out there that are bringing to us some incredible stuff all of us enjoy, not only there at Burning Man, but outside of Burning Man. And to experience that anyone going to get is that these incredible talents of artists and craftsmen and technical engineers and visual art bring such magic and emotion so that our horizons, our perspectives of life and the world around us can go way beyond and in here, in this space, you know, that imagination can just go free. And there's no criticism, there's no boundary, no block, there's no change. Oh, hang on a second. There are some blocks. There's some technical blocks as far as trying to bring art to the desert. And that is challenges. And that's what's exciting about experiencing this art, because you get to experience art different. You get to experience worldwide when you go to a museum or you're seeing art galleries or you're out there maybe in the people are bringing their art. This is what that's what's unique about Burning Man. So for today, I'm really excited to be introducing Bill Evans from Camera, and I'm going to allow him to explain to us, you know, what this is really unique. We're going to have to Burning Man 2018. So Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Bart, thank you. So perhaps the best way to describe it is to think about what you will see on the playa when you're out there. It'll be out on the open playa, and what you will experience as a burner from a distance, you know, before you even are able to see fully what it might be, as you often find when you're wandering the playa looking for art or just looking for a new experience, is you might see these occasional fire flashes where there's a couple of flash sources with a reasonably bright light. It's not as big as some of the giant sculptures there, but it's a reasonably big amount of fire coming. And as you walk nearer and nearer, you'd start to see that, hey, this looks like an old school Victorian plate camera. You're looking at something that's about approximately 10 foot cubed, and it looks like a Victorian era plate camera with bellows and a front lens and a back and so on. And as you walk closer, you would probably see, providing it's at nighttime, of course, because it's running from twilight to about 2 a.m., you will see people standing in front of this lens, and every minute or so, you'll see this flash of light that illuminates those people standing in front. And what the sculpture is it's an interactive experience designed for burners with any camera, a smartphone camera, their own camera, a fancy camera, a not fancy camera, it doesn't matter. Which it provides an optimized amount of light at a location just in front of the sculpture that both at twilight and, of course, into the black of the night, it's optimized for photography with these simple cameras. And it doesn't require any connection. There's no synchronization required. And the way you would experience then, if you said, well, let's take my friends or, let's take my group a photo, and one of you would walk around inside the back of the camera, like walking to where the plate would be in the old-fashioned plate camera. You'd go there and you'd be looking out through a lens about 30 inches in diameter. It's about at head level, roughly eye level. And what you see is your friends would stand in an area that's demarked about 10 foot in front of the camera. And we've optimized the light from these giant, what are called PUFA arrays, which are propane fire art. And they're designed to look like the old-fashioned powder flash cameras, powder flash sources from the way they used to do flash photography in the Victorian era. Now, of course, in those eras, it was magnesium powder and you risked singeing your eyebrows if you got too close. But this is large propane light sources. And so you step inside the camera, tell your friends to get ready, and there's a big old industrial foot switch on the floor beside the camera. You hit that and wham, you're releasing this burst of gas energy into those fire sources, and you get 4 seconds of optimized light that's designed to be a good enough source of light that even in twilight, when you have the sunset going on behind you, because it will be pointing west into the sunset on the open playa, relatively uncluttered foreground, hopefully, if everything goes well. And you'll be able to take those pictures, and of course, you'll be able to use it right through the night when it's black. And you'll be able to take those photos away, do what you like with them. They're very private, they're yours, they're inside your camera. We're not trying to mediate. And in fact, as the artist of this piece and my crew, which is very substantial, of course, who've helped make this possible as well and been big contributors, I'm not mediating how you use that light. You can decide to do, I'm sure the burners, being creative people, will choose all different kinds of ways of doing it. And all we're there to do is to provide a safe, fire-lit experience for you to take home. Now, there is a selfie feature which is built in, but the downside of that, of course, is that selfie has to upload to a website after the burn, and that's not going to be as secure, of course, as having it in your own camera. We're not going to have elaborate password codes and all that. My experience is that people forget that stuff. They're never going to find their photo. So we make it really easy. And if you take a selfie, you're just acknowledging that, you know, you could just go and get it afterwards. And many people don't care about the privacy. Some people are going to Instagram post away, but that's their prerogative. They can keep it private. And the project came about through my photography at Burning Man. I came to Burning Man late in life. I was in my late 50s when I first started going.
Yeah, me too.
And I was a professional, I'm a somewhat occasional professional photographer. I wouldn't say I was a full-timer. And actually, I'm also an industrial designer. So I've earned my living for about 40 years designing primarily medical products. So I have a lot of experience in making things, but they're not pieces of art. They're pieces of everyday objects that people use both in hospitals and at home, you know, blood glucose meters, those sorts of things, and the diagnostic tools. So I have a lot about making. But on the other hand, of course, as a photographer, I've become quite interested in the visual arts, and of course was very stimulated by the art at the burn, and particularly some of the interactive art.
We just lost your video here for a second. I don't know what just happened. Do we need to do a quick reset?
Okay. I think I'm showing, maybe it's poor reception.
All right.
Shall I try reset?
Yeah, just go ahead, reset that, because just absolutely wonderful. We want to make sure that we don't lose out, because maybe people are taking pictures of you. And now,
okay.
Let's see what's going on.
Give me
yeah.
I'm having trouble getting it back. So, oh, hang on. Is that back?
No, you're not back yet. I'm just seeing a nice big screen, green screen. Is that something on your end?
I've stopped seeing. No, I've stopped seeing your video, and I wonder if it's the reception at your end.
Maybe it is. Hold on a second. Well, that's most. Well, let's just continue, and let's see how this shows up. So you were saying?
Yes. So the way the work came about was through photography, and the first year I went, of course, I knew nothing about what to expect on the playa other than what I'd seen through all the fantastic photography that's available online, particularly Scott London, by the way, who really impressed me with his work. Many burners may be familiar with his work. It's excellent. And I happened to buy on Craigslist a job lot of a photo studio to help complement my photo studio. And it included, the guy threw in a bunch of these old school battery studio flashes that could run completely independently of the mains. And I had them, and I thought, well, that'd be cool to take those to the burn. And I thought, well, what can I do? So I thought, well, why don't I sew? I had some old reflective material, and I thought, well, why don't I sew a giant reflector on my back and throw these studio lights behind my back? And that's exactly what I did. And of course, I thought it would be a few hours to make it, but it took me a couple of days to make it. And what I did was I took a bunch of old tent poles and stretched this reflective fabric across it, which was both gold and silver. And I then found out that it was absolutely optimized for taking photographs at twilight. And it was great for me because that meant I could enjoy the burn for most of the time. But for a couple of hours around twilight time on several days in the first year I went and subsequent years, I would walk out onto the open playa in a location somewhat similar to where I hope camera Lucida will be located. And I would just walk up to people arbitrarily and say, hey, can I take a picture? And people would say, yeah, sure. They'd say, what on earth have you got on your back? And I would capture these images with electronic flash, which were studio quality lighting in the foreground. And of course, I would just leave the shutter open and expose the beautiful sunset in the background. And many people who are even amateur photographers are probably aware that the hour before sunset and the hour after sunrise is called the golden hour. And it's called that for a very good reason, because it's the most beautiful light. And that's exactly what I did. And I would post these privately to people. And I took the most amazing. I had people come up totally buck naked. I had people come up, with the most crazy costumes on stilts, all kinds of things. And people would just spontaneously, I had them for like 2 minutes or a minute, spontaneously pose. And it produced some pretty amazing pictures, even if I say so myself. It's from that I started thinking, well, wouldn't that be great if I could do that with fire instead of with electronic flash? And then I thought it through a little bit more, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be even better if people could do it with their own cameras, their own smartphones even, and do it themselves without me being the mediator of that? And it's from that the idea for the piece was born. And it was through the help of helping out with a couple of sculptures last year, which was my 5th year of going to the Burn. I helped out with the Phenocopterus rex, the very large pink flamingo. I helped weld that up. And then I also helped with a very great women-led fire arts group called Flaming Lotus Girls. And I helped them. They gave me some fire safety training, and I helped them on playa with a few shifts just to help out. And from that, I got the experience of, they walked me through how their sculptures work and so on. And that gave me a taster that gave me enough information to begin the process of writing a grant application to take that work to Burning Man. And it took me a while to arrive at the idea of using an old camera as the metaphor. And I was slightly influenced by the fact that early in my photographic career, I've been shooting for 40 years, dating myself a bit there. A book I came across that I found really fascinating about photography is called Camera Lucida. And it's written by a French philosopher. It was written around the 1980s, early 80s. And basically, instead of being a book about photography, which you'll get nowadays, or an online course, which will talk to you about, rules of composition and tricks to produce better quality photos, he really just focused on asking you as a photographer and a reader of his book to say, well, what's the point of the photograph you're taking? What are you trying to achieve with this image? And hence, how best can you frame that image, whatever it might be? And Roland Barthes, who wrote it, wasn't trying to dictate to you a style or say that, you should be shooting social realism or portraiture or whatever. He was more saying, well, you're the photographer. You decide what the point of the image is. And in fact, he used the term the punctum, which is a Latin word, I think just meaning point. And he said, what's the punctum of the image? And I really liked that as a beginning photographer, because so much of what you read about photography is all very technical. And there is a technical background you need to know about exposure and all that. But the reality is that, as many people know now who've got these excellent smartphone cameras in their pocket, that if instead of focusing on the technicalities, you focus on the point and the subject and the content, the way you interact with the person, the way you ask them to do something, or the way they spontaneously pose, these are all opportunities for getting a point across about something. And oftentimes I found when I was shooting burners and I was editing those photos afterwards, I would zoom in close on their faces, and I would find that I was looking at these very happy and sort of calmly happy looking people, that you're catching people oftentimes, particularly around twilight, when they haven't yet been tired out by being on the playa all night. They're oftentimes in a very relaxed frame of mind. That's the beauty of the burn. That's not true of everyone, of course, but it's true of a lot of people. And people are easy to cajole into having a little experimentation with how they might pose or whatever. And I think, you see that a lot at the burn. There's already many excellent, both professional and, of course, amateur photographers trying to do that. And what I'm trying to do with Camera Lucida is provide a forum where you as a burner can control the light. You fire that light, you're in charge of it. And it's optimized specifically for photography, as opposed to being fire art, where it's designed to be looked at and oftentimes be more dramatic and more yellow. Whereas for our light, we've gone to quite a lot of trouble through one of my fire artists that helped me build it, a man called Tom Need, who was tremendously helpful. Tom optimized the jetting so that we raised the color temperature a little bit so that it's still a warm source of light, of course, but it's not washing you out with a real totally red face, which can happen with some kinds of light. So it's very carefully thought about. And then the other meaning of the word camera lucida is, some people may well be familiar with the term. It was early 1800s. It was a predate to the camera obscura, and a predate, of course, to cameras generally, because it was before film was invented. And it basically is a prism-like device that you could clamp on a desk or take with you on a tripod into the country, and it would project the three-dimensional world onto a two-dimensional surface so that artists could trace that. And there's quite a large body of work trying to show how that transformed art in the early 1800s. And in fact, David Hockney, the artist David Hockney, wrote a whole book on that, where he cites very specific examples and shows paintings where he feels that these would not have been possible without camera lucida. So there's this double meaning to that that experience. And I'll be bringing with me, I hope, to the Burn actually a real ancient Victorian camera, which I'm due to pick up tomorrow, actually, which actually is an example somewhat similar to the one I based the sculpture on. So it's a very deliberate piece of interactive art, and it's one asking you as a burner, what's the point? I want you to think about what the point of the picture you want to take, and you use that light the way you want to. And if people want to post on Instagram and all that, that's great. We'll accept that, but we're very happy to have it be a completely private, very personal thing, and do what you like with that. I've lost you.
Well, great. I know that I have some connectivity issues.
Okay.
Here in Bahamas. I'm grateful that you share information. I'm not exactly sure well right now.
I can hear you now. So it is a bit choppy, so I can. I've lost you now, I'm afraid.
Being here in the Bahamas, didn't want to lose the opportunity to have this conversation because of your brilliance. And but being here in the Bahamas, I do stem cell surgeries over here, which is absolutely makes sense. And the work that you do is amazing and remarkable. And so,
thanks.
Is another interview with you in regards to this incredible work and see the follow-up because for me, people experience at the highest level the amazing talent and genius that you have, more kind of experience that you want people. And so what I'm probably going to end up doing is once I get into the United States, I'll be traveling for quite a bit in the next couple of weeks. But once I get back in the United States, when I have a great connectivity, really make this, repeat the conversation with you.
Okay, that's fine. I'm fine.
Let me ask you this. What's the one last thing that you want people to know about the camera lucida and what you're going to do? And, actually what I feel is that this is a beautiful experience to capture the essence of what it is, to be at Burning Man of your work.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think it's partly, to say something, perhaps stating the obvious, certainly to more experienced burners, is that in many ways, as a participant in the community of Burning Man, which it definitely is I'm standing on the shoulders of other people to achieve and to even find a part of myself that I'd never done something before. So as Larry Harvey famously said, be aware that when you go to Burning Man, you may find something you're not looking for. And I think that that's what happened with me, is that I did not enter into this with some master plan and some idea. It happened by a string of serendipitous events that involved both my creativity meeting the creativity of the participants and the willingness to collaborate of people at the burn, whether it be subjects of my photographs or other artists who inspired me to say, well, damn, you can do all these weird and wonderful things that you don't even think are possible. And so I'm a sort of accidental three-dimensional artist, although I have a portfolio of plenty of photography work. That's very different. That's two-dimensional. This is three-dimensional. I never for a second thought I'd become a fire artist. So I think what's clear is that I did find exactly what Larry said, bless his cotton socks. I did find something I wasn't looking for, and I discovered a side to myself that has been very eye-opening in terms of the communities I've been drawn into, the experiences, the richness that it brings to your life in allowing you to go down a pathway you hadn't perhaps thought you'd do before. And I think that there's many different things at the burn. Some people find it through interpersonal workshops, some people through movement, dance, visual arts, interactive arts. It's just amazing the way people do this. And I really am standing on their shoulders. And I welcome, people to join my, and our volunteers that join us. I would fully endorse and will be helping them if they in the future want to do their work, just as I was helped by predecessors. I'm very willing to help these other people, understand, nudge them on their way to being who they want to be and do the kinds of pieces of work that they want to do, whether it be visual arts or whatever. So I think that's a very important thing to me, that's a unique experience that I wasn't really looking for, but I found it, and it's been a very enriching part of my life.
I love it, and that, thanks for doing most of the speaking on this with my bad connection, and more importantly, the emphasis here is that I'm going to Burning Man. That's where we get that expansion of self, and so love that way that you portray it. You go to Burning Man and discover something totally new. So, Bill, thank you so much for today. And I'm going to insist that beginning in August, we reconnect and have another interview about your work.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Bart. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you.